everybody. Welcome to the next Walkabout Talkabout. I'm thrilled to be joined with one of my favorite games in VR, period. The Last Clockwinder guys. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves as they take their shots. But I'm Lucas. I'm the lead designer of Walkabout Mini Golf. And hopefully I don't embarrass myself with my golfing abilities. Okay.
Oh.
I'm safe. Wow.
Yeah.
So embarrassing.
You're just keeping that in your back pocket.
I don't want to brag. I'm pretty good at this game. I've had a lot of practice.
Are we gonna get sharks?
All right. We'll have to.
Anybody want to put some money down?
Yeah.
We'll have to do a competitive Last Clockwinder with you at some point, so we can return the favor.
I could see that. It'd be sort of like basketball, basically, except you play all 5 players at once or something like that.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Awesome.
Is this a
John? Yeah, it looks like John's shot here.
Yeah,
so.
I can start introducing ourselves. So my name is John Austin. I am one of the project leads. I do game design and engineering and business and all sorts of other things. And also co-founder of Pontoko. Yeah.
Awesome.
Take a shot.
Wow us.
Let's see that whole
Wow
one.
us with me? Your golfing prowess.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right.
And I don't think any of you guys have played this course, so you have a very good excuse.
That was really close, actually.
Yeah.
That was a good shot.
Pretty good.
Awesome.
That's me. Hey everyone, I'm Matt Blair. I'm the other co-founder of Pontoko, and I also do game design and engineering and whatever odd jobs are necessary to ship games. That's how it'd be. So let's see.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Oh, what the hell?
Wow.
And I feel a little
All
bad
right,
we made Anita tee off a little earlier because she had to get it technically set up for us. So
It's true.
She was holding back on purpose.
I'm also not good at this game, so we don't have to. I'll take any handicaps I can. I'm Anita. I am the art director at Pontoko, and then because we're such a small team, I also do a bunch of the little indie studio running odd jobs along with art direction. All right.
awesome. Well, so I played. Actually, most of us on the team have played Last Clockwinder. It's definitely one of my just favorite VR games. Period. Just like that, sort of like it's just so. How do I put it? Just the mechanic of it is so simple and something that you can only do in VR. And it's just like I'm
Right.
curious how you guys sort of found that mechanic or where the idea came from, basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, first, that is super nice of you to say. I really appreciate that. This is like our first VR title that we've shipped, so we really had no idea if it was going to be good at all. And I think the mechanic was sort of kind of a stray, just chit-chatting about game design kind of idea that stuck in our heads for several years. We had this period where we were sort of fumbling around with what game to make next, and we had this idea, and we're like, oh man, this would be a great VR game. Just it's so perfect for the medium. It really you just can't do it in any other kind of format, and it kind of forced our hand. We didn't really set out to make a VR game, but we had this idea, and we're like, well, now we have to. So it was.
So is this your guys' first? Was it the first VR game that you guys had done then?
So it was the first one for the studio. Phenomena was a pretty heavy VR company, so I'd even made a Quest game before this that didn't release. So I sort of had one under my belt, but the first proper VR game, I would say. And it was also our first time going through, I would say, all of the different I guess like areas, like we had voice acting, like proper voice acting, like we hired like a writing team and like full 3D assets and things like that. Like we kind of just like ran the gamut of all of the different fields, I guess. Whereas some of the other games we've made as a studio were smaller. Like we made a 2D game for iPads like back in 2015. So it's been interesting to sort of do all the different things. To your question about where the idea came from, like one of the things that always sticks in my head is like very early on, like we had this imagination of like 1,000 copies of yourselves knitting this like infinite sweater. And like that was like, to me, that's like the initial seed of the idea that always stuck with me. Like we never, made it. We didn't make it a sweater knitting game, but that definitely was part of the compelling image for me. I remember that we actually had made a prototype
cooking
for this.
too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, cooking too. Yeah. Like lots of different things where you can copy yourself and form assembly lines. Yeah, we made a prototype of this game back in 2015, 2016 that we just remembered. Like until like a couple of weeks ago, I had like convinced myself that we started this game back in like 2018, 2019. And then I was like, oh, wait, I made an entire prototype of this game in 2016. And we had to shelve it because other things came up and we just didn't have the funding to make it. But it had been kicking around for like quite a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, we were really
and by the way, feel free
to
whoever's turn it is, feel free to go ahead. But
is
I
that?
don't know whose turn it is.
Oh, by the way, if you look at your club and it's blue, it's your turn. That's the
it's
way
me?
you can.
Oh my
that's the way
gosh.
you can tell. Not that we have to sort of like rush through or anything, but just you can kind of.
I didn't
chat
even
as
know.
we
I just
play.
didn't realize it was my turn. I totally would have.
So I'm curious how big the studio is, or like, are you guys all in person? Are you remote? Just like, what's the general sort of like, kind of the makeup and the story of the studio itself?
We've always been remote for the second question. It's never been we've never
Yeah,
all
we
lived
started
in the same
remote.
place.
It meant that we didn't have to do much in the way of adjustment in 2020.
Yeah.
Which,
If anything,
good.
was a benefit.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm also kind of curious what your guys' kind of individual backgrounds are. Like, have you been doing game design pretty much like, did you study it in school, or is it something that you picked up on your own?
So
Just sort of generally how you got into it.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So I'm definitely one of those people that's been making games like for a long time. Like when I was super young, I was just making games in like Flash and all the sort of games creators and I taught myself programming at a young age. So I've sort of been making games like in high school. I don't know. There wasn't really a moment I wasn't making games of some form.
Yeah.
Not all of them released. I never made the hit Flash game that I was intending to, but
the
definitely
Newgrounds, whatever the
Yeah.
that was close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there are seeds of ideas there that still stick around sometimes. We all, at least, so Matt and I met in college, and so in the game design course there, and so we made 2 games in college, one of which we've released. That was A Gathering Sky. So Matt and I have been making games for quite a while, although we haven't always been full-time at it. Like we sort of took some jobs in the middle there to save up some money and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much what gets us to now. And then I guess so, like, I don't know, like, yeah, I took a stint at Phenomena. We worked in tech for a little while. I've done a lot of like AR, computer vision stuff. So back in college, I was doing sort of machine learning, computer vision, and that's kind of how I jumped into AR, VR. And that's kind of how we got to this game. I'm not sure, like, if I hadn't worked at Phenomena, whether I would have known to make a VR game. So it's been an interesting path.
That was where the seed came. Matt, how about you? You guys went to college together, I know you said.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it wasn't a long-standing hobby or anything. I was in school for mechanical engineering, actually. That's what I graduated with. And nice. It was like my senior year, I guess, and I was kind of like done with all the like important courses, and I'd always been a fan of video games, and there was like a game design course And I'm like, sure, I kind of like programming. This seems fun and not an overwhelming amount of work. Spoiler, it was an overwhelming amount of work. But we kind of just like paired up almost like it was kind of random, and we worked together super well, and we kind of both like went nuts on the projects we were making a little bit, and it was super fun, and it was the end of my career in mechanical engineering.
And you never had to I mean, I was a music major in school, so I'm the king of sort of like, not using any of the... Well, actually, ironically, I'd probably get to use some of the music, even though I don't do any of the music. I actually work, with Chris, the composer, a decent bit, and at least sort of like help figure out direction and all that. So in a way, it's probably actually pretty good that I got a music degree. But yeah, Anita, I'm kind of curious. Did you? School. How did you get into game design?
Definitely not school. I kind of just I did go to art school, so art part definitely stuck around. But yeah, I thought I was gonna work in animation for a little while. I actually did an internship at Nickelodeon, and then decided I didn't want to live in LA. So yeah, when I finished school, I moved out to the Bay Area because I just liked it better than LA and still wanted to be in California. And kind of just fell into video games because that was the applied art industry here. But yeah, I've always played games. Like, some of my favorite things growing up were like Morrowind, absolute favorite. So
nice.
Yeah, it worked out well. And then I've kind of just been contracting in and around games, a little bit of tech stuff here and there, because I live in the Bay Area, but mostly games since 2013. And I met Matt and John at this old games co-working space that used to exist in San Francisco. No longer, but yeah, we all used to work out of this
R.I.P.
place called
Game Nest.
Game Nest. Yeah. It was a lovely spot while it lasted, but unfortunately, indie games and indie games creators are not the people who can afford to pay office rent in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yep. I am kind of curious. I want to get into sort of like the game design stuff, but I'm also just kind of curious of how this came about, because on the business side, you guys did something that's also fairly difficult in that you basically got publishers and you got people involved early on. A lot of the stuff in the VR space, like, I'm kind of curious at how far did you guys get it on your own, or when did you sort of like bring on some partners? Just sort of like, I'm not trying to pry, but I'm just also generally kind of curious, like how that process worked for you. That was a terrible shot.
I can talk about a little
Thanks
bit
for
of
taking
that,
it easy on
unless
that
you want
shot.
to take it, Matt.
No, it's a good question, because this is like not a thing that gets talked about by a lot of developers as much as it probably should, because it's super important. But what I was going to say is like the key thing that we focused on, and I think ended up working great, was making sure we had the best, like, quick, understandable pitch for the game. Like, we had this idea, and it's kind of like a high concept. Like, it's easy to see it once you watch the game in action, but we didn't have the game at the beginning, and we couldn't just show it to people. So we had to come up with ways to explain this, mechanic. And we went through a bunch of iterations. We had like the sort of like knitting, or like making a team of like line cooks or something, and then to explain it in terms of like games that people already know, we would say like, oh yeah, it's like like Factorio or Satisfactory. It's like that, but you're the machines.
Ooh, nice shot.
Wow, that was a great shot.
Amazing.
Oh,
Aced it.
I've never done that.
Wow.
That was impressive.
But yeah, that pitch is really, I think, what made all of the sort of publisher things come together. Like, I've never experienced a game that pitches so well. Like, even to people who don't play VR, we've pitched the game and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get that. Like, that sounds amazing. I'm just like, great. Problem solved. Yeah.
Yeah,
in
and to
terms
be
of
clear,
like
it
sort
still
of
took us a while to be able to pitch it for funding. Like, the pitching process, it was not, I don't want to say that made things easy for us, because it was still like multiple rounds. We had to, for some of it, it was like, some publishers just weren't interested until there was like more final art, stuff like that. So it's never an easy process, but I think that was like super helpful for us.
I think that we pitched to like 30 publishers and they all said no, like at one point in the process. Like the process was pretty complicated, and like not all of it I can really mention because of just like contract reasons.
Absolutely.
Like, but to say what I can, I guess, like we got a little bit of funding early on to just sort of like make something, and then it was actually quite late that we brought on Cyan and Robot Teddy. So Robot Teddy is doing like business development for us and a bunch of other things, and Cyan is doing publishing and helping out with QA and marketing and that kind of stuff. But we actually didn't like sort of secure those deals until like the game was like almost essentially done. Like, we were finishing up the third act, but like you could play through, you know, a solid 3 to 4 hours of the game. But so unlike most games where you like pitch it and then you make the game, like this is sort of like retroactive. But we also sort of lucked out because there is like just general VR funding out there, which is not really a thing in the traditional game space. You have to go find a publisher. You're not going to get like, you know, Microsoft or just like chuck you some cash for a game. Whereas like there definitely are platforms out there in VR that like are still funding content because they know they need to have a platform, that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit easier, I think, for indies to get in because of that.
It's really wild to me how film seems to, I mean, I guess this is what you get if you know, have an industry running for like 100+ years, but this is like, you know, film is generally like they know like how long things are going to take, you know, like you say you're going to like, you know, release this movie in like 2025 or something, and it happens. And like, this never happens with games. Like, no one knows how long anything is going to take. So it's very different, like you said.
That's definitely something I've missed from the film world now that I'm more on the game side of things, is just sort of like that, the more linear, steady, sort of like with games, you just have to try stuff out and you have to be a little bit more experimental just in order for it to work. And even then, sort of like, we probably have closer to a film model now that we're doing a course, you know, we're still not to that course a month that we've kind of set as our internal goal, but we're putting out stuff on a regular basis. It's almost more like doing an episodic TV thing where you're like, oh yeah, we deliver a new episode every periodical, you know, every month or so. So it's a little easier to break it down into discrete chunks. Oh, so close. So close.
It seems really appealing, actually, like to be able to, you know, be using like tools that you're familiar with and like have sort of like a workflow and like timelines for stuff. Right. Whereas like, you know, making the Last Clockwinder is like, this mechanic didn't exist before. We don't know what puzzles are gonna work. We just have to make stuff and make the wrong thing a lot until we accidentally make the right thing.
Yeah, and I think
well, it's also really.
I really wish we could like make a. I don't know. I understand why so many studios go for like DLC or like, you know, sequels and like follow us, where it's like you have all the like, you know, tools and like skill with the game that you've already made, and it's kind of a waste to like not use more of it.
Yeah, and
well,
I think
some of that also
we weren't even like that far off. Like we thought it was going to take 2 years and it took 3 instead of it taking like 5. But you know,
it could have been much worse.
You hear stories from like indie game creators who are like, I thought this was going to be a 3-month project and it turned into 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure it helps though that you guys have worked at so many other studios and you have, because so was this the
Right.
first game that you as a studio published, or you said there was another mobile game that you had released, right?
We made Gathering Sky, which was it was basically we made a game for advanced game design. So Matt and I did intro game design and enjoyed working together, and so we came back around for advanced game design, and that game turned into Gathering Sky, which is this sort of tablet game. Well, it's also for desktop too, but it's basically a game about guiding a flock of birds through the sky. It's kind of this meditative, musical, artistic, definitely art house game sort of thing. And we did the whole publishing.
We were pioneering the meditative flock 'em up genre.
Exactly. But anyway, we did the whole release system there, like working with Apple and like how do we get feature placements in these stores and all that kind of stuff, and also just like how do you actually get a game that's out as opposed to like mostly done, which is the hard part, I think.
That's always one of the things that I
nice
whenever
shot.
people are asking like, oh, for for advice or something, it's like always publish something, like just to go, like if you don't actually release something,
Right.
you miss like 50% of the work and 50% of the knowledge that is actually going to help, because the making, the actual the core production that people always think of, not including like all the polish and all of the storefront stuff and all that, is
Right.
only like half of it seems like. So
Yeah, and it's
it's
definitely
a thing
the
that I
final
didn't
half that
like.
takes longer.
I didn't like believe it until I actually did it. It was like, surely, if you have a game like that runs and like is fun to play and stuff, then like that must be all of the hard parts done. But no, it is 100% true that like
You're
getting
halfway
it out
there.
the door onto a storefront
Yeah.
is like way more work than it makes any sense to be, and you just can't really like see it until you do it yourself.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I've asked a lot of business questions just because, again, I'm also kind of like, I'm learning the games industry coming from a different, kind of a parallel industry, but
Yeah.
I'm also very curious on the creative. So one of the things that I really liked about Last Clockwinder, it was a really cool mechanic, super fun to play. It also sort of like, you did a great job just sort of like taking a simple mechanic, building on it. But I'm kind of curious, sort of like with a puzzle game like this, like it could have been twice as long, but it feels like you guys hit the perfect amount of like, oh, you really used the mechanic and you elaborate on it. But how do you sort of with a game like this decide how much content is going to go in, or where the stopping point is for kind of an open-ended puzzle game like this?
It's definitely tricky.
Well,
I mean,
Yeah, it
Sorry.
depends on who you ask too, because we definitely have players who are like, I want more puzzles.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. It's like, oh, you liked it enough that you want more. I do kind of like experiences that like don't overstay their welcome. You don't like have enough of it that you like even start to get a little bit bored of it.
yeah, I think it's definitely tricky, especially with a narrative game, is you're sort of balancing puzzle pacing and narrative pacing at the same time. And I think sometimes if the game runs a little too long, you start to get a little bit long in the narrative pacing. And so, that was definitely a balance. I think honestly, like a big part of it is also just like boring things like planning and things like that. It's like, like we want to deliver a number of mechanics that are at a high enough quality, like making sure all of the fruits are really interesting to interact with and like actually add something rather than just sort of pad out the experience. So we didn't want to like add more levels if they were going to be repetitive. Partially because of that means adding more content does take a lot longer. Just because we have to find new mechanics and really polish them
more
up.
levels. If we wanted to add a ton more levels and make them new and exciting, that would mean like not only would we have to design new mechanics, but we would also have to, like, the art team would have to come up with a new look for the new place, and there's just like a lot of bandwidth questions that we didn't have enough time for.
Ooh, so close. So I'm actually kind of curious, and I'm not asking if you guys are like, not like an official announcement or anything, but have you guys considered adding more in either like an expansion pack or anything like that? Or at this point, are you sort of like, are you pretty much moving on to the next game?
It's definitely on our minds, and yeah, we're not going to say anything because the littlest, the littlest bits of anything are always, grabbed onto. So no promises at all. But it's definitely a game that does have potential for that. And like one of the reasons we're interested, there's like a little modding community around the game right now, which is trying to reverse engineer the game, and so we're actually pretty supportive of that because it's a nice way for people to add like more levels without like us needing to go through the entire production cycle. If we did add levels, I'm particularly interested, and I can't totally speak for the team, but I'm particularly interested in some of the like doing something a little bit like non-narrative. Like if you remember like the DLCs for Mirror's Edge or like even Portal, I think had some DLCs where it's just like you like make the DLC in like a non-narratively related area. Like maybe it's just like a bunch of rooms deep in the ship that aren't related to the story, because a big slow part of making all these levels was just like, oh crap, this level now has to like engage with the story in this way, and environmental storytelling, and like it's kind of this massive puzzle that all has to fit into place, which makes everything take twice as long. But if you just make some levels and don't have to like have those constraints on it, then I think we could do something a little faster. But
and you could maybe even do a couple of mechanics that might not fit narratively, but are just really fun. That again, using more of the mechanics than the actual thing. So
Well, and also it wouldn't have to fit into a pattern too, because a lot of what we were trying to do is like find emergent behavior and like such that as you add these new fruits on top, like they all sort of play into the others well. But that also adds its own set of constraints. So if we can do some like separate levels that are just like, maybe it's just one mechanic and you only see it once, and like that's just how it is, I think we could do a lot of interesting things there. There's also like you're not restricted by like tutorial flows and the need to have certain types of difficulty increases and all that kind of stuff. So
we did have other mechanics that were prototyped early on that I feel like they have a lot of potential. Nice shot. That just didn't fit into the rest of the game for various reasons, and there's always hope that like we can find some way to actually like make a fun puzzle or something around that. I think the thing that I was most shocked by was the person who figured out how to build like tools out of the like fruits and bonders, which was never intended. I don't think we ever tried this, even in our experiments. There's
somebody had oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm taking a shot.
Okay.
Yeah,
somebody had taken, so in the game there's these little bonder sticks where you can use to sort of poke through two fruits to bond them together, and somebody had taken that and full on like built by attaching a lot of bonder sticks to a main fruit. They'd built a little bowl, and they were using it to sort of shovel fruit. And it had like a handle and everything. It was totally wild. We had never expected anyone to make something like that. I think it's on Reddit somewhere.
That's awesome. I mean, I hadn't even really thought of that, but you guys also have one of the things like we have in this, which is once you introduce physics, like things suddenly become open-ended. We have like the trick shot community in this game of people who are like doing what you're doing, like, there's a spot where I can bounce off the gondola to get a hole in one, or like,
my God.
Never expected that was going to be a thing, but physics really opens up the possibility of just what you can do.
It's really not even a thing you need to like plan for in our experience. Like players are gonna like, they're clever and they're gonna surprise you. That's that's like one of my favorite things actually about like watching people play a game that you think you understand.
Totally. Yeah.
So I have one more sort of like selfish question that I'm very kind of curious about, because again, coming from the film world and story and writing was always sort of like, that was my big thing. I'm very curious with something like Last Clockwinder. The story is fantastic. How do you intertwine that, or at what point did you guys figure out the story to support the mechanic, or was it vice versa? So I'm curious what your process was for that.
It was messy.
The mechanic definitely
so
came
many
first,
iterations.
though.
The
mechanic did come first, and we spent a long, agonizing process trying to make a setting and a story that would have some sort of meaningful connection to it. We spent a lot of time thinking about okay, what are the themes that emerge from this mechanic? Doing all these repetitive behaviors and building sort of machines out of yourself and trying to perfect things, and it led to a lot of dead ends, but it also eventually led to the characters who were in the game. The sort of that's so close. Oh man.
That's rough.
But yeah, the character of Adia came out of this idea of this sort of obsessive perfectionist, and this is the kind of person who we imagined using tools like this and kind of going all the way in that direction. So it did start with a mechanic, but the story also influenced the setting, and then that influenced what kind of objects you're working with, and it all feeds back into itself.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think that a lot of this story came out of also Matt and I's experience with being engineers. In a lot of ways, this is an engineering game kind of through and through, and there's always this sort of desire and romanticism in engineering for making the perfect machine. This kind of the idea that if you just work hard enough, then you don't have to touch it and it'll keep working forever. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of a false idol, I guess. So to me, a big theme of this game was that the importance of a human being in the loop, because you can't if you build a perfect machine, you're going to perfectly encode all of your problems and all of your errors, human error, into the machine. There is no concept of this idealized perfect robot. So I think a lot of that came out of those feelings, and that kind of evolved into someone like Adia, who we wanted to be sympathetic in some ways, that she just really just wants to make this place perfect and not have human error, and keep these plants safe. But in doing so, she actually makes things worse. So trying to, I don't know, I definitely see a lot of myself in Adia in some ways,
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely
I definitely picked up
really
on how
interesting.
how the character was integrated into that, and that's why I love that there were those deeper story. It wasn't just sort of story as sort of a facade. It was definitely deeply integrated into how you guys were doing the rest of the world and building it all out. So yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me on the course for a little bit. Yeah.
Can I just
we
say,
definitely.
I love the
looking
tiny
at these
clubs
maps
right now.
from
It's
Oh yeah, the little tiny club that you get when you.
so funny.
We actually fixed that bug a while back, and so many people were disappointed that we fixed it that we actually re-enabled it, just because
absolutely.
you gotta have
It's
the
a feature.
you gotta have the tiny
It's a
clubs,
feature,
So.
yeah.
Yeah. And Wesley's so tiny. Well, awesome. Well, everybody, thank you guys for watching. Definitely check out some of the other talkabouts. And is there anything that you guys want to say? Check out Last Clockwinder. Anything else that you guys want to say or plug?
Gosh, I don't know. Follow us on Twitter, I guess. But
play our game.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Share the game. That's what I would say. The thing that helps us the most is just sharing it with your friends. That's.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Tell your
Sharing-
friends. It's an
sharing it
awesome
and
game.
rating
We've
it
all been
is
playing it here and
super
love it.
helpful.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for watching.